Good morning to everybody. Thursday, 11 o'clock. Welcome back to the Agent Box. Do you know one thing I'll say? I think my builders know when I'm going to go onto the Agent Box because all morning it's been absolutely lovely and silent. The moment we go live, the guy starts doing something. You understand? So I apologize again.
We should invite them over to this podcast. I think they want to be part of it.
I think no, they're sabotaging it, man. It could be a competition. But anyway, listen, welcome. My name is Sham Ghani to another episode of the Agent Box, and with me, my co-host,
Abir, the Maverick.
Yeah. Welcome to everybody. Okay, so first question, Abir, how's your week been, man? What have you been up to?
It's been great. Last week, if you remember, we talked about I was looking for a car, and then I finally sorted it out. It's a nice ride. Pardon?
Did you get one?
Yeah, I got one. It's a smooth drive. I have been out and about the whole weekend, even after office in the evening. So I have been living off my car now.
Oh, excellent, man. Excellent stuff. No, well done. Hey, listen, before I forget, actually, a very happy Holi for those who celebrate Holi for Monday, I think it was. It was Holi on Monday. So, yeah, happy Holi for those people who celebrated that.
Yeah.
Look, okay.
We have 4-day weekend coming up as well.
Yes. Easter coming up. Thankfully, tomorrow is a holiday here, and Monday as well. I've got next week off, although I will be around for the Agent Box on Thursday.
I'm so jealous.
So, yeah, for those people celebrating Easter, a very happy Easter coming up for you as well. Right, guys. Okay, so today's show, we've got a topic in mind, which you can see, I think will come up on the title, which is the MRes program, Masters by Research, Opportunities and Risks. In fact, what led to this, not that we only decide to do these things 24 hours in advance, but actually Abir and I were in a discussion yesterday where a lot of, we were thinking about doing the MRes topic this week anyway, but a lot of questions actually came up quite serendipitously talking about the MRes. So we thought, actually, this is a great subject to talk about today. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of that, just to say that, the Agent Box is sponsored by Sam CRM. Please go ahead and have a look at their website, samcrm.co.uk, and find out what they have to offer. You can book your demos and stuff like that. This is it's an award-winning CRM system. So by all means, check it out. Okay. They got a little email going at the bottom, sales@crm.co.uk. And a lot of what we talk about, in fact, we were talking about this backstage, that a lot of the subjects that we're covering, a lot of it is data related. It's actually synced in with data. And it's actually worth having a system, or at least considering a system, whichever one that you guys think, you want to get. Okay, so MRes. Why is MRes important, Abir? Tell me, what's the issue?
Well, there are quite a few reasons. I feel that MRes program is a research master's, first of all, but not for all cases that we're going to cover in the next few minutes or so. But I think the MRes program is on the rise. Mainly, I feel, is for the wrong reasons. Because still, in the postgraduate level, if someone wants to be independent, MRes is one of the route. But our concern is on what we're going to talk about today. Are we promoting it right? And are we placing it to the right kind of students? Because if you remember last week and the previous weeks, we talked about immigration is not a problem in the UK, but the UK government statement is pretty straightforward. They want the best and the brightest. So when you're recruiting students for MRes, we have to ensure that whether we are recruiting the best and the brightest, what are the risks, what are the opportunities. There are quite a few opportunities, but there are quite a few terminal risks associated with this as well. So what are those risks and how we can navigate it?
I think you're right. Let's rewind back to last autumn. Last autumn, when we had the government changes with regards to student visas here in the UK, anybody that was bringing their dependents over for postgraduate programs, because for undergraduate programs, it wouldn't really matter because you wouldn't expect, an 18-year-old to have dependents or a 19-year-old to have dependents. But postgraduate students, they were able to bring their families over. And the government made a decision last autumn that they're going to stop postgraduate students from bringing families over to the UK. The only route they kept open was the research route. Now, research covers a lot of different things. Most cases, research means PhD. That's what it means. When you're talking about doing a research postgraduate in the UK, you're talking about doing a PhD. So what the government is saying is that if you're doing a PhD in this country, you can bring your dependents. Fine, we're happy with that. There is then the question of the MRes, right? The MRes falls into the area of research, not at every university. Some universities, which we found out yesterday, some universities, the MRes actually falls into the postgraduate taught category. Therefore, you cannot bring dependents. But for most universities, the MRes will fall under the research hub or the research department school. And therefore, it is classed in the same type of course as a PhD. And therefore, the dependent route is open. But I think you're absolutely right, Abir, that are we pitching it right? Are we putting it in front of the right students? Now, let me tell you, okay, and I know you guys are certainly in the office bored of hearing this, but I've been around the block for a few years in this business, okay, and I have worked at grassroots level. I was an international officer. That was my first job, where I was talking to students, agents every day of every week, out on the road, multiple countries all over the world. In all my time as an international officer and any senior roles since then, I have probably only ever come across less than half a dozen students, so less than 6 students that have ever wanted an MRes.
Wow, in your 20-25 years.
Yeah, I've never. And I've spoken to some of my other colleagues in the sector, some other international office staff. Hey, Dev, how many MReses have you sold in the past? And everybody says, I haven't sold any. Do you know what I mean? Or hardly any. Very occasionally, you might find a student that is interested in MRes. I've sold a lot of PhDs. There's certain countries around the world, PhDs are very popular. You take, for example, an outlying country, somewhere like Iran. I've been to Iran before. Lots of students in Iran want to do PhDs. Go to Malaysia. Lots of students want to do PhDs. And you get PhD students from coming all across the world, okay, to the UK, wanting to study at a doctoral level. MRes is not a course that I have sold. And it's surprising now that there seems to be a lot of conversation around the MRes. The fear that I have, Abir, and I think you've kind of alluded to it, is that we are pitching it in the wrong way. That we are using it as a loophole.
I think it is in relation to what we talked about the week before, I think, the mis-selling. Whether we as agents are mis-selling a product. So I think
it's more. I hang on a second though. I'd actually say that. Look, hang on. Are we creating a rod for our backs here, right? That let's say I have a student, right, who comes to me and says, you know what, I really wished I could have gone to the UK last year to study a postgraduate because I could have taken my family with me. Is there anything that I can do now? And my default position as an agent is, of course, there is. Do the MRes. This is a problem. This is a problem. And I'm going to go into why this is a problem in a minute, right? The MRes program, let's just define that for a second, right? The MRes.
Before you go into that, I just wanted to clarify here that, see, we understand the importance of family, right? You want to bring your family as well. But when you are going for a course, the fundamental priority for you should be the course itself, whether it's going to add value to your career or not.
Yes. Absolutely, 100%. And people forget this. People forget this, or if I'm being cynical, they choose to actually ignore that bit. That the course doesn't matter. I need to get to the UK. I need to bring my family. So what course can I do to achieve that objective? And that's the problem. That if I was a guy that's walking around thinking I want to do a PhD, but I'm not. Okay, before we go into I'm a guy walking around wanting to do a PhD, let's understand what the MRes actually is. The MRes is very specifically a program that is designed for students that don't have a research background. Because think about it, right? If you've done a master's, say I've done an MBA, right? Now I want to do a PhD in something. Actually, that's not right because my MBA had research involved. Let's say I did a master's in something, I don't know, whatever it might be, in a country, masters of marketing, and in a country where it's just a textbook orientated, masters. it's not a master's that's taught in the UK, because almost 99% of all masters taught in the UK has research elements to it. Okay, in your dissertation, you have to do research. But there is a thing called research methodology. There is an actual method of conducting research in an academic context, and that is what the MRes aims to give you.
You're making me nostalgic. I always struggled with research methodology during my undergrad and postgrad research as well. I didn't know which way to go. And
do you know what? In the UK, when you do an undergrad and a postgrad, both of those will have research. One of the modules you're going to have to, mandatory modules that you're going to have to do, is research methodologies. Okay.
And the lowest grade I got is on research methodology when I submitted it.
Yeah. Do you know why it's tough, Abir? Because there are a million different ways you can do research. It's not something you can learn in a textbook and memorize and then take an exam. It's not like that. There's a million different ways, and there are a million different people that have said a million different things about how to conduct research. Now, your supervisor, your tutor, may have a favorite way of doing research, and that's the favorite way that they're going to tell you that you should do research in that way. But there is no right or wrong answer to this. There's many different ways to do it. So when somebody comes from a country where they don't have a research methodologies or elements in their bachelor's and masters, it's textbook orientated. You have, even at master's level, you've got textbooks. You learn those textbooks, you take an exam, you pass or fail your master's. For that kind of student to go straight to a PhD is difficult. So therefore, now, if they do the MRes, which kind of brings them up to a certain level, and then they can complete their PhD following the MRes, that helps those students.
Do you think MRes is more of like a bridging course for someone to get into the research?
I don't want to call it that, because it's a master's in its own right? It's a master's in its own right. And some people just choose to do a master's in research, and that's absolutely fine. They then don't want to go on to do a PhD. But often students will think, well, if I've done an MRes, if I see a student that's thinking about doing an MRes, automatically in my mind, I'm thinking they want to do a PhD. This is very different from somebody wanting to do a master's in management. A master's in management you will do to basically get that next job, to go up the career ladder, to apply for certain jobs, to get promotion, whatever. You do an MRes, that says to me that you now are thinking about doing a PhD. Okay.
So coming back to the question, who do you think are the right candidate for an MRes?
Well, this is it, isn't it? Not somebody who's looking to move to the UK with their family and is looking for a way to do it. So look, and again, I'm being very cynical, and we're talking about opportunities and risks, right? The risk up to now, which has led to the government to change their policy, is that you suddenly had huge numbers of students coming over to do masters with their families. And I'll give you a statistic that I watched on there was a documentary, I think on Monday evening here in the UK, a BBC documentary that talked about something like 250,000, don't quote me on this, but it was something along the lines of 250,000 student visas issued, of which 145,000 additional visas for dependents. You understand what I'm saying? At a time when the British government is taking immigration, looking at the Tory government is very keen on looking at what immigration is on about. So they closed that route for a particular reason, which is that they don't want lots of these postgrads coming over with their families and creating pressure on the NHS, creating pressure on schools, creating pressure on all sorts of public services. They don't want that. What they still want, though, is students that are coming over to study a master's, which has been happening for decades. For decades, I've been working in this sector where students are coming over to do a master's. They come on their own, they finish their master's, either they work for a couple of years here or they go home and they have family over there. Or in some cases, the kids are younger and they don't have family, right? So you've got to really understand your market when it comes to this. But as agents, if I'm putting the master's by research as an option, the first question I need to be asking my candidate is, what's your PhD going to be in? But what gives you the knowledge or the thinking that you want to do a PhD? Because here's the rub, Abir. So let's say somebody who hasn't researched, they hasn't looked at this. Ironically, they haven't researched their masters in research, and they just decide that they're going to apply because they can bring their family. This is brilliant. This is what I want to do. So then they arrive in the UK. They bring their families. They all came, right? What does a normal student expect? Normal student expects that I'll come onto campus. Once I've enrolled, I then look for where is my classroom. I look for a timetable. I want a timetable. I want to know where are my classes. I want to know which time to which time I'm expected to be in class so that I can think about my part-time job. You know what I mean? I can think about other things that I'm going to do in my life. Well, here is problem number one with MRes. There are no classes. There is no timetable. It doesn't work like that at all. So you come on campus, enroll, and you're walking around, expecting to get this timetable from your tutor or whatever. It doesn't exist. So now imagine what this person's going to do. They're going to try and find their supervisor, who quite frankly could be overseas at this point. They could be doing something, they're doing research overseas with something, I don't know. So the supervisor doesn't even exist on campus just yet. So you go to the research hub, you speak to reception, and you say to reception, okay, so Mr. or Miss or Mrs. So-and-so is my supervisor. Where is this person? Just send them an email. Send them an email.
So you are kind of like a headless chicken running around.
They'll get in touch. My fear is the motivation level for that student is going to diminish dramatically because they don't know what this MRes is. All they thought about is I can bring my dependents. And that is the fundamental risk for us as agents, because we will not get paid commission because that student is not going to continue. That student's just going to fall off the radar because they don't know. This is not what I expected. I expected to be taught something. You're not going to be taught anything. You're expected to figure it out. And how many international students? Look, I'm generalizing here in case I've got any partner universities screaming at this right now, saying, no, we have structured. Some MRes courses do have a module that they will teach you, which is the research methodologies. And you might have 4 hours a week that you have to go to a lecture and to actually be taught the research methodologies. But generally speaking, and I'm taking an extreme view, that the MRes is not about going to class, being taught, and then take an exam and pass or fail that exam. It's about you being passionate about a subject matter that is important to you and the fact that you want to do research on this subject. And that subject could be shoemaking. In fact, no, shoemaking is $2,000. It could be shoelace making. Because I know somebody, a good friend of mine, who did a PhD in the lead inside a pencil.
That sounds very interesting.
That's her PhD. It's zeroed in on what is the constitution of the lead inside a pencil. But that's how pinpoint specific a subject at master's at research level needs to be. You need to be passionate about a dot, a tiny dot you're passionate about, and you want to blow that dot up and do all the research that you can do about that dot and become the world expert in that dot. Does that make sense, Abir?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So my question to you would be, since we're trying to help out our agent friends who are watching it, so what would be the checklist or what would be the framework they should go for when recruiting a student for MRes program? So if we could guide them in step-by-step process, or what are the checklist or what are requirements?
To me, the number one thing to do is put aside the fact that you can bring dependents. Put that aside for a minute. Let's put that over here. We know we can. Let's park it. Put that away. Now, that's point number one, because that's going to cloud the judgment of the student. So let's put that aside. A guy comes along and says, look, I'm 32 years old. I want to do some kind of research, but I've got a wife and kid or 2 kids, and I can't leave them in the country. So, okay, all right, that person speaks to me. I'd say, right, let's put that aside. I can take care of that. Let's put that aside. What do you want to do when you go to the UK? What do you want to study? And they say, well, I'm really thinking about doing a PhD, but the PhD, I heard that, there's a lot of research. I'm not sure whether I've got any research background or whatever. Then it's a case of, maybe I don't know whether I want to do a PhD and commit to 3 or 4 years in the UK. I want something shorter that I can try and see whether or not a PhD route is good for me. Brilliant. Let's do an MRes. Let's do an MRes. And let's now talk about what is the subject that you were thinking about doing a PhD that you're not sure about. Okay, the subject is, I don't know, whatever, blah, blah, the constitution of, or how to use bamboo to make, pencils. This is what I want to research. Okay, now let me as the agent consider which university might be interested in this research. So let's look for a university, and this is where me as an agent, I would have to go do my research to find out which university bamboo, what would that fit into? That's more, is it a science? Obviously, it's not a business subject area. So I'd need to look at some universities that are good at science and then see whether or not they've got a department that might be interested in doing something like this. Once I've found, okay, there's 3 universities that I know they've got good science departments, I would say to the student, try and contact a supervisor. Get in touch with that university, go on their website, or we'll have a look together and find any contacts within that university department where they might be interested in this particular. But before we do all of that, my friend, do you have a proposal?
Before we go, I'm hearing right now, so the approach is completely like when someone is looking for a PhD, it's kind of like a similar approach if someone wants to do an MRes.
It should be virtually the same. It should be virtually the same, but the restriction here is that maybe the student doesn't want to commit to 3 or 4 years in the UK to do a PhD because they can't afford it. They want to spend a year maybe coming to the UK to do something that gives them a taste. Then it's okay. Well, the MRes, this is why I've not sold MRes. I'm telling you, this is the very reason why I have not sold MRes. Because if you had it on a Venn diagram, it would be a very small section of people that actually the MRes caters for. It'd be a very small section of people. And this is one reason why I haven't sold it, because you can't, it's not, because if you're thinking along those lines, you might as well do a PhD, And so
also, I think when there is a subsequent question that comes to my mind, because when someone goes through all these processes for a PhD, usually there is a grant involved. They're going to get some grants. So is there any grants available for MRes?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I don't think there's any kind of funding available for the MRes. It is down to you and your personal, I want to basically sharpen my tools before I think about committing to a maybe I'm working and my employer won't give me more than a year off. Do you know what I mean? Then okay, I want to do an MRes. So I might not even be able to take advantage of the 2-year post-study because my employer wants me back home. You understand? Or I can get a maximum of 2 years I can get from my employer because I don't want to quit my job and then come to the UK. So actually I can take a 2-year hiatus and then come and do an MRes and then go back and then think about a PhD. So, I mean, there's a million different ways you could cut this, but the fundamental point is, if we try and use the MRes as a way to enter the UK to bring family, this is going to come and bite us, quite frankly. Unless, again, I have no problem in a student doing an MRes, bringing their family. Not an issue at all. The government doesn't have an issue. Why should I? The universities don't have an issue. But the point is for the right student. I think we're storing up a problem if we don't get it right at the beginning, at the counseling stage. If we simply promote it as, I mean, I've seen an advert or two, and I can't remember where I've seen it, where want to go to the UK with your family, come and do MRes. This to me is a problem because naturally we're attracting the wrong guy.
I think it comes down to that fundamental philosophy of a student agency, that we are a student recruitment agents. We are not immigration agents. So let's not.
But even, do you know what? Even if I had a strap line like that, want to bring your family to the UK, come and do an MRes. Even if I did use that and to attract people, I, as an agent, need to be absolutely clear on what an MRes is. Because then what I can do is I might get 100 people getting in touch with me saying, oh my God, yes, I do want to do, go take my family to the UK when I go to study. Right. Well, there is one option, which is the MRes. But now let's interview you, whether you are suitable for the MRes. And out of those 100, maybe one of them or two of them might be suitable for the MRes. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I'm doing it just to industrialize the MRes program and just industrialize the sale of it,
that's
just
where the problems is going to start.
This is dangerous, and I tell you why it's dangerous. Okay, a lot of people on who know me, and maybe people who watch the Agent Box will also know this. But my wife works for a university, right? My wife works for a university. I've had many conversations with my wife about the MRes. She herself has been in the sector for about as long as I have, maybe a little bit shorter. Certainly 20 years she's been doing this, right? I asked her, how many MRes have you sold? Nothing. She goes, I can't remember a single one that I've ever counseled a student for MRes. I can't remember doing it. And I said, so have you worked at universities that do MRes? She said, of course she has. She's currently at Huddersfield, but she was working at Huddersfield before. She's worked at Queen Mary. She's worked at Heriot Watt. These are Russell Group universities. And of course they're doing MRes. So how many MRes have you sold? None. You know what I mean? Because I've never had the opportunity. And now all of a sudden we're pushing this as the #1 program to try and get students to come to the UK. Wrong, so many levels. It is wrong. Okay? It
and
needs
special shout out to Nazapa. She has a wonderful lady and a human being. She fed me so much.
It needs, well, thanks a lot, man. I'll pass that on. But it needs very careful thinking behind, because I could attract those students, and if I can sift through them properly, then okay, fine. But if I can't, but listen, we're going to run out of time. There is one thing that I want to say, right, which is this: that the UKVI, okay, has already communicated to the universities towards the end of last year that if the UKVI all of a sudden sees universities promoting MRes or creating multiple MRes programs, or there is busyness around MRes, they're going to shut down that route. And they're going to come after the universities. This is a warning that the UKVI has already given the British universities. That be careful, guys. Be careful that we're not stupid. We're not dumb. We know that we've kept the research route open for dependents, but specifically around MRes, they've raised a query. The UKVI has. And this has gone round to all of the British universities, that just be careful. So what the UKVI is saying, that let's say universities that didn't really have MRes programs before, if they suddenly start writing lots of MRes programs and pushing it out, oh, we have MRes, you understand? And they're changing their master's programs almost to call it MRes, and it actually is just a master's program with a different title. The UKVI is coming after them. You understand? And then I tell you something, guys. The people that are going to be blamed, as they always are, okay, are the agents.
Of course.
The people that are going to be blamed are the agents. Yeah. Anything like this goes wrong, it's always the agent that's at fault. And we had a discussion a few weeks ago about this, that we're always the fall guy. We're always the bad guys. You understand? So we will then be blamed for promoting, this weird kind of way of emigrating to the UK. So we do need to take this seriously as a sector, as a group of professionals. We need to take this very seriously. Again, I would reiterate, I'm absolutely 100% for promoting Masters of Research to the right candidates. And I don't think we should promote it as a route into the UK. Because if a university were to see that advert, they would have a problem with it. Because if the UKVI saw an advert like that, they'd have a problem with it. Do you know what I mean? And they'd come after the university saying, okay, who's putting this kind of stuff out? That we do. The Masters of Research is for research. The UK is a hot potato of research. During the pandemic, lots of the groundbreaking research was coming from British universities. So Britain wants lots of researchers to come here, but they don't want potential immigrants looking for a route to get into the UK and using the MRes. They don't want that. And they're aware that people are going to try that.
Yeah.
So this is something that, you know, look, I mean, it's one of those things, man. Half an hour gone already, man. We need to shut this down. But I think this is it's food for thought, isn't it? It's food for thought. It's something that we need to think about. It's something that we need to consider. Yes, we want to promote the MRes, but we need to do it very sensibly, and we need to do it in the right way. And one of the advantages of promoting the MRes to the right candidate is that if they have dependents, they can bring those dependents to the UK. You know, but people looking to emigrate, as we've said already, as you said right at the very beginning of it, there are many courses that you can do here in the UK that will guarantee you a job at the end of the program, and you will basically can live and work in Britain for as long as you want. So we don't need to be clever about these things. We need to be, you know, actually more insightful into the right kind of people that we're promoting. Anyway, folks, look, that's pretty much it for today's episode, I think. You've been watching the Agent Box, coming to you live every Thursday, 11 o'clock from the UK, with me, Sham, and my colleague Abir. But also, just to let you know again, that the Agent Box, we can do this because of Sam CRM. They're our sponsors. You can go onto their website, samcrm.co.uk, and have a look at their CRM product, and you can create, request a demo. There's an email address at the bottom, sales@crm.co.uk, to talk to them directly as well. But with that, it. Look, next week I am on leave, but I will be in the studio for our episode next week. I've just got to put it on several diaries so I don't forget. But I'm sure, Abir, you'll remind me anyway.
Nice.
With that said, guys, that's it for today. You know, thank you very much. You've been listening to me. My name is Sham, and
this is Abir. Like we discussed, so let's pitch the right product to the right client and enjoy your holidays. And we'll see you next week at 11. And happy recruiting. That's all for today.
These guys, take care of yourselves. Thank you very much.